Welcome to our wrap up of the Commencal Meta SX. This is a bike that's been getting a lot of playtime here at Revo Mag for the last few months. Scotty's been riding this bike an absolute ton, and today we're going to give you all of his insights and details after having spent so much time pushing this bike to its absolute limits. Now, before we get into the review, of course, be sure to like, subscribe our channel, and if there's anything we cover in this, don't cover in this video that you want to know, pop a message in the comments below, and Scotty or I will get back to you real quick. Now, Scott, as we said, Meta SX, we've done some intro stuff on this bike, which you can check out on our channel. But first off, hit us with the numbers. What sort of wheel size travel are we talking?
Okay, so this is the SX being the mullet option, so 29-inch front wheel, 27.5-inch back wheel, full alloy frame, and this is a 174 up front and 160mm of travel in the rear. Right,
so quite a lot of bike, full-blown enduro, hits that category spot on.
Yep.
Now, spec-wise, the Commencal obviously offer brilliant value for money, and they also have quite a few different spec levels for this bike, but this one is spec'd a little bit unique, and it's something that is kind of unique to Commencal. Tell us a bit about the spec of this bike.
Yeah, so the cool thing about Commencal bikes, I mean, apart from the fact that they offer this bike in a ton of different build options, this is what they refer to as the A La Carte build. So you can literally jump online, go to your local bike shop, and you can do a custom built bike with all the bits that you want your bike to come with.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, Commencal, of course, direct, sort of factory direct, I guess you'd say. But in Australia, they run it a little bit sort of differently, more unique to some of those sort of other direct to brands. Tell us a bit about some of the options that Commencal offer and how they make it a little bit easier, I guess, to get their bikes, to sit on their bikes before you purchase one. Run us through what they do over here in Oz.
Yeah, well, they're really good at actually looking after their customers. I know the guys from Commencal personally, and they've got a very strong focus at, looking after their customers. So yeah, sure, you can buy this bike direct. You can jump online if you know what you're looking for, and you can pick the bikes you want and they'll deliver it to your door. Or you can go in and check out one at their showroom in Sydney. You can speak to the guys down there and you can literally buy a bike down there at the showroom. Or you can, if you've got a good relationship with your local bike shop, they'll order one of these in for you and they can build it up in the local bike shop as well. So they've got all bases covered.
Wicked. Now, let's talk a bit about the frame. Of course, it's got Commencal written on it, which means it's aluminium. They don't do any carbon bikes, but They do cut alloy very nicely. Mate, tell us a bit about, obviously it's a size large, you're a big guy. First impressions we've covered, but what's this bike like to ride, and when you're hopping on it, what are some of the first things you're kind of going to notice? You know, if someone's viewing this at home, what are they going to kind of hit them in the face straight after that first ride?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously this is more on the burlier side of things as far as an enduro bike. This fits in right there with the style of bike that I like to ride, and more of the gnarlier trails, and it's obviously built for descending, however, it still pedals extremely well. Being a mullet as well, it corners that little bit better, and in comparison, say, to the AM, the full 29 that we've tested previously, I find the frame and everything with this bike is still got that nice big pivots, that industrial look. However, all the frame has been really refined. So the bike is actually a lot more nimble. It's a little bit lighter, still very planted, but still handles amazing. And especially with that little wheel in the back, you can definitely tear through those corners. It's unreal. That's
a really good point. Now you mentioned the Meta AM, which is essentially the same frame, but it's a 2.9 front and rear.
Yep.
Being the mullet, does that make the bike a little more playful?
100%.
Right.
That's the big thing with it, is it's still nice in a straight line, but super playful, so you sort of get the best of both worlds.
Now, how's it handled through those real rocky, kind of gnarly sections? Obviously, the 2.9 wheel is going to probably be a little smoother in float. Does this thing get bogged down, or does it still just have just as much pop?
No, look, and if you've ridden at our local trails, which we've done a ton of riding on the Blue Mountains, I never really noticed the bike getting hung up on the back wheel. Sure, I set it up a little bit differently, like with the smaller rear wheel. I probably find that I actually run the rear end a little bit livelier than what I would with a standard 29er rear end, but it never got hung up on square edges. It maintained momentum really well, and that's probably got due a little bit to the longer rear swing arm as well. I think it's 448mm.
Okay.
So a little bit longer, but with the shorter offset fork and whatnot as well, it's still nice, tracks the ground really well. So I really didn't notice any dramas with the smaller wheel in the rear end. As a matter of fact, I found it an advantage in most places.
That makes a lot of sense. Mate, tell us a bit about the way you've set your suspension up. I know having spent so much time on the bike, you do like to get back and DIY, fiddle with your bits.
Yep.
Tell us a bit about where you kind of the setting you've kind of sat on and finally got to with this,
Yep.
in terms of the fork and the rear shock.
Yep.
And yeah, tell us a bit about that.
Again, so I mean, suspension setups or bike setups isn't sort of something we go into too much detail on, only because, you know, it's different for everyone how they like their bikes to feel, where they ride, who they ride with, and, you know, how they ride their bike. But with this bike, most bikes are set up very, very planted. I like my bike to feel a little bit more planted, whereas, you know, our other test rider, Blake, tends to like his bike a little bit more livelier than what I do. And, you know, we do have a completely different style. With this one, I find that I run the fork a little bit firmer and a little bit slower, and I actually ran the rear end a little bit softer and a little bit more livelier, again, sort of to maintain that sort of momentum through all that chunder as well. So I did play a little bit with the setup on the suspension, but I mean, obviously with difference in suspension, whether it be, you know, RockShox or whether it be Fox or whether it be Ohlins or whatever it is, they do have their different characteristics, but the new Fox stuff on this bike is super duper unreal.
Wow, okay, yeah, it does sound like pretty cool. Mate, tell us a bit now, people that are buying a bike like this, a lot of travel, pretty burly spec, it's not really a kind of a one bike to do it all, but is this a bike that you're not going to be able to ride up a hill on, or will you still be able to get, like, make a full weekend out of kind of if you own this bike?
Look, funny you say that, like, and as I touched on the AM before, the AM, the big 29er previously, actually pedaled reasonably well for what it was. However, you know, in some sections it was a little bit of a slug. With that steeper seat tube angle and the sort of refined sort of angles on this bike as well, for what it is, this thing climbs actually really well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that's surprising as well.
Easy to plug up the hill. Obviously it's built for going downhill, but for riding up the hill, it's definitely not something you're going to get too aggressive on, you know, on the uphills, but you get it into a nice gear, sit and spin, you definitely climb up the hills, no worries at all.
So some of those refinements that Commencal have been making to the Meta over the last couple of seasons have really paid off.
Oh, 100%. So, I mean, when you put your seat tube up, you know, it does shorten the reach a little bit. You can get over the front wheel a lot more, so you can put that little bit more weight on the front wheel. So with the bigger front wheel, it doesn't wander on the climbs as well. Okay. But when you deck the seat as well, you really, like the nice low standover height, you've got plenty of room for descending once you deck the seat as well. So overall, climbing, but then the difference when you actually deck the seat is dramatic. Right.
Tell us a bit about how the bike handles in the air. I know you like hitting big jumps.
Yep.
And there's plenty of jumps in around the trails we ride. Yep. And the locals. Yeah, how's this thing feel? Is it quite stable in the air?
Yeah, it's good, mate. Like even some of the, like obviously the big long stuff, it's, you know, nice and stable. Some of the more steeper booters and whatnot as well, like the bike tracks, you know, really well. And it does, like the style of this bike and the way it's set up, really does inspire confident riding, especially over the sort of larger features and, you know, larger sections, especially around here.
Perfect. One of the things we like to touch on in most of our reviews is kind of putting a personality to the bike. Who is going to get the most out of this bike? Like if you've got a viewer watching this at home and they might, you know, a bit more mellow trails or got a downhill background, what sort of rider is really going to get the most out of the Meta SX, do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I think if you come from a gravity fed background and you really like your descending, then this is the style of bike that you would definitely be going for. I mean, if you're going to, you know, cut cross-country laps on the weekend or ride around the local park or just ride some flow trails, you might want to consider the TR, being, you know, the shorter travel version of this. So this is in the more sort of burlier realm. So if you're the type of rider who really likes the aggressive stuff, likes the rough stuff, likes the big gaps, but yet you want something you can still pedal all day long, and you want something that's nice and nimble, corners really well, and is a hell of a lot of fun, then the SX is definitely the way to go.
Well, there you have it. If that sounds like you, this is quite the package, and it's definitely worth jumping onto CommonSaleBikes.com to check this thing out. As I said, there's a bunch of different specs, a bunch of different price points, all really good value for money. That's been our review of the Meta SX. If there's anything we didn't cover, like I mentioned, drop a little comment below and we'll get back to you right away. Until next time, catch you later.